All swearing will be recorded, so be careful.
Oh, damn.
Thank you. Good morning and thank you for being here for the first of what might be an annual environmental activities in Upper Dublin open house. My name is Mike Haas. I am the chair of the Upper Dublin Environmental Protection Advisory Board. If you have heard of environmental activity committees in other towns or townships, EACs, our EPAB is much like an EAC. The board was chartered by a resolution of the Board of Commissioners in 1993 and has stood continuously since then. We are composed of volunteer residents of the township. No particular prerequisites are named in the application. Applications for new positions when vacant would be posted on the township website. I applied from an advertisement I saw in the Gazette. Go to the next slide, please, Rebecca. These are the current members of the board. I wanted you to see them without masks. From the bottom right side, Melissa Lafine, Austin Faberman, Joe Thomas in the check shirt, Eric Lindholt, Ed Landau, Dr. Mark Osias, and myself, Mike Haas, in the middle. I am a biochemist. We've asked the other members and speakers today to say a little bit about their skills when they get up and talk. Several of these people will speak to you later today in the oral part of the program. Several will be present at the tables in the lobby. We each serve for a 3-year term, which is subject to renewal upon approval by the commissioners. We're unpaid, and we meet monthly and discuss various environmental issues. We can see the next slide, please. Rebecca, thank you. When the Board of Commissioners resolution founded the EPAB, these were the major assignments. Talk to us about or do studies with regard to environmental matters. In that regard, in recent years, the EPAB has written and sent to the commissioners white papers, a white paper on PFAS in drinking water, to try to alert them to the dangers of it. And much more recently, a subcommittee of the EPAB with a few other citizen members wrote an extensive recommendation to the commissioners advising that they switch from fossil fuels to renewable energy in the operation of all township operations. And I'm sure Melissa will say a bit about that when she speaks. We were tasked to assist the board in such areas that relate to the environment, as you can see here. And we have a number of activities underway in those areas that will be subject to some of the talks and present in the table displays. We were also tasked to review commercial development plans. We see all commercial development plans. We comment to the developers suggesting environmental improvements or modifications that we suggest as being good. And we also submit a corresponding document to the Board of Commissioners that lists these suggestions. But we're just an advisory board. We don't have nay or yay approval authority. We are advisory by definition. And so that's our status in relationship with developers and with the board. Finally, we were tasked to do community outreach to exchange information. And so we liaison with EACs of neighboring towns and municipalities. And we do things like this event today to try to inform the population of the township on environmental opportunities and activities available. I'd like to thank all the people who were involved today. Eric Lindholt in the blue shirt is the coordinator of the program today. He was assisted by Melissa Lafine next to him, the two co-coordinators of today's presentations. I want to thank the board members who are here and speaking today. I want to thank the several members of Parks and Rec has people here who will talk. Experts in various areas from the community will speak to you or have table displays. Steve Stone is here from the Shade Tree Commission to help you understand a bit about what Shade Tree does. In the context of the structure of today, approximately the first hour will be talks in this room from 2 minutes to 20 minutes, perhaps, on various environmental programs underway in the township. Then we will go to the lobby to see all those delicious looking table displays out there. And there should be opportunities out there for you to sign up. If you want to volunteer into programs that you see described at these table displays, there ought to be some sign up forms. Also, we wanted to have some Earth Day activities available to you that you might be aware of and might want to sign up for. So I think somewhere out on the table somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric,
The wood table,
the wooden table,
and the sign up sheets, yes.
somewhere by the pretzels and the Dunkin' Donut holes.
Well, we'll have to find them themselves.
Okay, you'll find those yourselves. I also want to thank Parks and Rec who are here. I'm sure Rebecca Lohofer, our projectionist, has better things to do on Saturday morning. And Linda Brink of Parks and Rec has been very helpful to us. And I want to acknowledge the presence of Tiffany O'Brien, if she's here. Tiffany in the green is the legislative aide for Senator Todd Stevens, the state rep in the 151st Legislative District. So if you should want to interact with her on anything with regard to Mr. Steve, Representative Stevens, please find her after the formal talk. So we'll begin the program. My colleague on the board, Ed Landau, is next. He's done a lot of work on recycling, helping to revise the pamphlets, helping to let people know what the best recycling ways are. Ed, go ahead. Thank you. And thanks everybody for being here today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I am Ed Landau. I am a landscape architect. All of us on the board have different things we sort of specialize in. I got interested in recycling, so I've been following up on that. And a big portion of when we review projects, I do the reviews for those. So I have a few minutes to talk about recycling, and I guess our recycling slide is up now. We are creating a sheet which kind of gives you more detail. The township has a thing which you probably got in your mail a week or two ago with your tax bill, which has a brief list of things that go in the various containers, but there's always been a lot of question about what goes in which container with a lot of things. So in our thing, we have identified the blue, the brown, and the green containers, and essentially what goes in them. We have it in more detail. And I want to emphasize a few of the items that the sanitation department gets the most concerned about. Most of you know the cardboard, glass bottles and things, and plastic bottles. For example, people don't, the lids do go in recycling, and it's even better if you leave them on the bottle, they say, because that helps the thing, and then eventually it'll squeeze the bottle down, the lid pops off, and that's one less thing to worry about. And then there's things that don't go in recycling. Anything with cords, hoses, 6-pack holders, they can tangle up the equipment. So they don't want those. And plastic bags is one of the worst things, because people put stuff in plastic bags and put it into the recycling container, and then they can't really sort it out well until they get it out of the bag. If stuff is not acceptable at the recycling center, there's a video running out there on a laptop. It's really neat to see. It's a 4-minute video showing you just how the recycling center works. And it's also accessible on the township website if you want to look at it separately. But if stuff is not acceptable and these guys are scanning it, they throw it into a residual dumpster, and then it costs the township like 3 times as much for stuff. And sometimes it just makes the stuff unacceptable. They did an audit last year. We went through one of the neighborhoods, and I'm just going to read a couple of notes from the audit that the township did. The things from personal observations here, I'm reading it. Some of the more common contamination items were plastic bags and film, styrofoam, doesn't get recycled there, soiled pizza boxes, soiled paper plates, napkins, paper towels, food waste, bottles of liquid. You want to empty the bottles out. The worst thing is any kind of food contamination. Clothes hangers, they mess up the equipment up there because they get tangled, caught in the machinery. Large toys, glassware like window glass, dishes and stuff like that does not get recycled. That's a different kind of glass. Scrap metal, motors, wires, things like that. Shredded paper also doesn't get recycled because that messes up their equipment. And there were a few stops. They did this audit where they went around and pulled off lids. So there were a few stops that had bags full of used diapers. Who would think we recycle used diapers, was a comment. Also found clothing at several stops. So pizza boxes is another issue. So as you go through the recycling sheet there, then it'll tell you in more detail. And then on the back, we talked about house drainage, which Eric's going to talk about. Hazardous waste, there's a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't go in it. And I'm going to have boxes of stuff out there in the tables to show you what doesn't go in. Electronic waste, they have township once a year, we'll have a pickup for that. Shredding, they have a township thing for that. And one of the things that's, the ladies want a styrofoam, they find it a lot. And I went to the Styrofoam Recycling Center and they said, if it cracks, it's considered to be styrofoam, and any kind of styrofoam that cracks is usable. So I guess that's the essence of it, so. take
And
it away.
just to remind everybody that Ed has gone to great effort on this, and they are available on his table if you make a left coming out of the way there. My name is Eric Lindholt. And my day job is I'm the general manager of the Upper Moreland Hatboro Joint Sewer Authority. One thing is we do service Upper Moreland Hatboro, but we accept sanitary flow from 6 communities, including Upper Dublin, basically between North Hills and Twining. What I want to let you know about is that there are things that you should not flush down the toilet. It's not some magic disposal system. You don't put motor oils and stuff like that. One thing I want to stress, do not flush flushable wipes down the sewer, into the sewer. These are things that can clog up your laterals, cost you hundreds of dollars to get rid of. They're also not very good for the environment, and it impacts our pumps and everything else. Eggshells are another thing that can cause wear and tear on our equipment. Medications, prescription drugs, they're chemicals that don't get treated in a biological system, so please don't do that. So I will leave you with this. There are 3 P's that you should flush down the toilet. Those are pee, poop, and paper, as in toilet paper. So if you take anything away, don't flush flushable wipes. And the 3 P's, pee, poop, and paper. So thank you for your time. Appreciate your time.
Hi, my name is Melissa Lafine. I joined the EPAB a couple years ago because my passion is really energy and renewable energy. I've been working with the Department of Energy for about 20 years on advanced vehicle technologies. So that's my background. And in the last 2 years, a group of 4 of us from the township decided that we wanted to push things towards renewable energy in our area. So we came to the EPAB, we came to the Board of Commissioners, and we said, let's do some more with renewable energy. Let's make a goal of achieving 100% renewable energy in our community by 2035 for electricity and 2050 for everything else. And they said, is that even possible? What are you talking about? So we developed a plan over the past 18 months as part of a program with a number of other municipalities in our area to transition the municipal operations, which is, everything that our township does, our township staff does, to 100% renewable energy on that timeline. And we showed them how it can be done. And as a result, in December, the Board of Commissioners did pass a resolution committing our township to 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and 100% renewable energy for heating and transportation by 2050. So now the question is, how can we do that for the entire community? So right now we are in the process of gearing up to get stakeholders together to talk about how we can do that as a community. How can we bring our entire community to 100% renewable energy so that we can avert the climate crisis? So anyone out there who might be interested in working with us to develop that plan, please let me know. Please put your name down on the sign-up sheet so that we can inform you about any meetings that we decide to hold, and so that we can get you involved, because we'll need a lot of people to help us to develop this plan and especially to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Junie Alam, and I'm not on the environmental board, but I do attend a lot of meetings, which hopefully we'll start seeing some of you at the meetings as well. I'm a resident in Upper Dublin. I moved here 2 years ago. And my background is primarily in water resources. I'm a water resources engineer. I've been doing this for over 15 years. I serve on the National American Water Resources Board, and I've served on the Delaware Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. I was a board member. I'm very passionate about water resources, very passionate about stormwater management. And that's what I hope to contribute to the board, I mean, as a resident. And so I'm here to speak to you about stormwater management in general and what we can do as residents to keep our waterways clean. And also mitigate floodings. So really quickly, I'm going to talk about if any of you are experiencing flooding on your property or in your neighborhoods, there are various best practices that we can implement at a residential level that may also even benefit our community as a whole, or streets that you're seeing flooding on. If your property does experience flooding at your residence, interior areas that are below the flood elevation, we recommend putting in sump pumps. Other things you can do are trying to grade swales or drainage area paths that can divert the flow away from your property. Some of the other things you can do are replace like ceilings, floors with flood resistant material. So that's what those are just very few practices that you can do on your own for your own property. Other things that you can do on outdoor in your lawn and your yards are putting in rain barrels. Rain barrels help hold flood water that's coming off of your roof, and then slowly release it. You can reuse it on your property for your gardening or just simply detaining it helps alleviate flood downstream in the streets and then ultimately in our creeks and our rivers. So the thing I'm trying to stress here is that we can do things for our own property, but we can also do things as a community together, and the additive effects of us implementing some of these type of outdoor projects like rain barrels or rain gardens also contribute to our watershed, our Upper Dublin as a whole, our creeks, streams, and then ultimately rivers downstream, such as the Delaware River, Wissahickon. So things like that. So like the outdoor projects I wanted to talk about were the rain barrels and the rain gardens, and also trying to remove some pavement from your property. I know that's not something that we like to talk about, but there's like simple things that you can do. For example, I have at my house a huge paved patio, and not a concrete flat patio, and I'm going to convert it to a paved patio, because if you've got pavers back there, you now allow water to seep through and go into the ground, and you're improving not only your flood mitigation, like water now is slowly coming off of your property, and that's also going in and improving the quality of the water is now being improved because it's going into underground through plants. And so there's multiple things we could do, and I don't have enough time. I could keep going here. I don't want to do that. You can come see me out there. I'd love to talk to you about what we can do as a community, as residents together, to help not only mitigate flooding, but also improve the water quality in our watersheds.
All right, I'm Joe Thomas. I live in the Aiden-Lair neighborhood of Drescher. Got 3 little kids, so that's kind of why I'm on the board. My day job is environmental engineer, professional engineer's license from Pennsylvania. And, I've done everything from remediation of groundwater and soil to corporate compliance to hazardous and radioactive waste. So my thing that I found that doesn't get enough attention was our streams. And there are quite a few in Upper Dublin, as you can tell when you drive by them when it rains, and they tend to overflow. But the big thing that we've found is there's a lot of salt in our fresh water. And it comes mostly from road salt, but somewhat from the salt you spread on your sidewalks. And so about 2 winters ago, as a board, we tried out the Isaac Walton Salt Lodge. It is a program based out of Maryland, and you basically, you go to your local streams, you test the water for chloride, and you send in the results just with an app. So you can do it right there in the field. You can take a picture, attach it to your results. And the idea is to take these readings over time, and you can see, monthly is a decent amount, but maybe every 2 weeks. You take these readings, you can see how the water quality changes over time. And so it's a pretty simple process. I have it out on the table out there. There's QR codes for the websites. Lisa Fantini with the Upper Dublin High School. She's also runs Robbins Park. She set up a nice map for students to report their readings. I have a link to that out there as well. And basically, the reason it's important is because 230 parts per million is when of fluoride in water is when it becomes toxic to aquatic life, plants and animals. And that's approximately equal to a 1/16 of a teaspoon of salt per gallon. It's not a lot. You know, the ocean is 30,000 parts per million. So you can see how small amount of salt can make a huge difference. So the idea is to collect a lot of this data, and then we can start to think about ways to not use as much salt. And hopefully we can get on, you know, we can start making recommendations to the township. So if you have any questions, you want to participate, it's pretty simple. I can show you how it's done, and, you know, I have a table out there, so. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Steve Stone. I'm chairman of the Upper Dublin Shade Tree Commission. I'm a lawyer by training. My love of trees began when I was a little boy and learned that I love to climb trees. And I've had that love affair ever since, although I don't do much climbing anymore. The Upper Dublin Shade Tree Commission was established by ordinance of the Board of Commissioners in 1994. We are 5 members with staggered terms, uncompensated, who are appointed by the Board of Commissioners. I and one other have been on since 1994. The ordinance defines shade tree as any tree having more than 50% of its trunk diameter at breast height within the right of way of a public street or on township property. The ordinance vests legal custody and control of all shade trees in the Shade Tree Commission and requires anyone wishing to plant, remove, trim, or spray a shade tree or any portion of the tree which overhangs the right of way to submit an application for our review and consideration. Now, the Shade Tree Commission conducts a number of programs. We work very closely with various township departments. I see hiding behind the mask in the back of the room, Derek Dorica, who's our Parks and Recreation Director, and we work very closely with Derek and his staff. Sherry Fiore, who's our current host in this building. We work closely with her, and indeed we're working with her on plans for landscaping on this property that we're in right now. As an aside, one of my other activities, not shade tree related, was I was chair of the Facilities Task Force, which evaluated this property, the Lockouch property, and made the recommendation adopted by the board to bring the library here and to have this space available for the kinds of uses we're putting to it right now. I mentioned that we conduct a number of programs. I should say that since our inception, we have planted or given to residents to plant over 4,600 trees in Upper Dublin Township. And with a program that is literally going on right at this moment, and I'll talk about that in a second, we will pass the 5,000 mark by the end of April. One of the programs that we do is a very popular Adopt a Tree program, where we make trees available free to township residents and property owners, free, although donations are welcome and gratefully accepted. In this program, we acquire a number of trees in the potted trees, 4 feet to 6 feet high generally. We make them available for pickup by township residents. You take them to your home, you plant them where you want to plant them. Right now, that program, we transitioned that because of COVID to an online registration that has worked so well with the assistance of Tammy Echeverria from the Parks and Recreation Department, that we're continuing in that mode. That went live for the current program Tuesday of this week. And if you go online now to the Parks and Recreation or Shade Tree website, you can see the registration form. You sign up for the tree that you want, so long as available quantities are available. You'll get a confirmation. You'll come and pick it up on April the 9th in the rear parking lot of the library here, and off you go. So that's and this time we're doing, right now we have 305 trees available for registration. We're hoping to increase that number. Right now, there's a little bit of a supply issue because trees are very popular these days. In addition to the Adopt a Tree program, we conduct an annual Arbor Day program where we do a symbolic tree planting to celebrate Arbor Day, which is the last Friday in April. For many years, we've been doing that at one of the various public schools in Upper Dublin Township. This year, we're going to do something special here at the library, planting a tree at the library entrance for Arbor Day. Timing is to be determined exactly, but it's going to be around Arbor Day itself. We also do what we call an annual planting program where we plant larger trees at select locations in the township, often on township property or in the parks, sometimes at the township building. And we'll use that program to fund additional trees for the library facility. Among our other activities, we inspect potentially hazard trees, trees that someone could be a member of the township staff, a member of the public, a member of the police department thinks could be a hazard to navigation, whether it's in parklands or on the public streets. And we come up with either an approval for removal or trimming or a disagreement about that. But we're charged with making those determinations. We also review development plans for private developers on their private property and make recommendations for changes, and especially to increase and preserve trees on their properties and to pursue diversity. We don't have authority over plantings on the private properties, but we have moral authority. We established what we call the Heritage Tree Registry, and you can see that on our website as well, where people who have or think they know of significant trees, either because of their age, their size, their unique qualities, the representation of a species, can ask us to register that, and we have a number of those trees, and we invite you to add to that. And then lastly, one of the things that we do is arrange for Upper Dublin Township to be awarded the highly prestigious Tree City USA designation from the Arbor Day Foundation. You may have seen signs at various points around the township, especially at the gateways, Tree City USA. That's through our work, and I'm proud that we've had that designation continuously since 1997. So that's a bit about the Shade Tree Commission, and we do have a little table with some brochures outside.
I could ask Becca to come down. You can just stand in front here.
Let's go.
That's great.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Keats. I'm here on behalf of the Environmental Project-Based Learning class at Upper Dublin High School. And before I start, I just want everybody to take a moment and close your eyes. And as you're doing this, just imagine you're back in high school. Think about the classroom. Think about what you're seeing, what you're smelling, maybe what you're hearing even. Okay, everyone can open their eyes. Can any of you raise your hand if you envision something outdoors or heard a bird? Did anyone even envision a plant or something like that near you? Well, that's exactly why I'm here to talk to you today. So our mission this year is to create a safe outdoor learning space called The Hive. And it's going to be located right next to the Upper Dublin cafeteria. And so the way we're doing this year is we're following the Living Building Challenge guidelines. And that is the most rigorous green certification we have. And the goal of this is to create the most sustainable space that we can. So the materials need to be safe for the environment. We're using reclaimed wood from the tornado and incorporating that. And so I know all of you have heard of the 3 R's of environmental: reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Yeah. So our mission also is to kind of make those a more modern thing. And the way we're doing that is we're fixing the 3 R's. And our 3 R's are actually to regenerate, restore, and reconnect. So the regenerate the environment is our first mission. And that's what I just talked about, the Living Building Challenge. That's how we're doing that. We're incorporating trees. We actually just got some trees from Tree Tenders as well. We were working with them. Our next goal is restore mental health, because the pandemic has obviously hit everybody pretty hard. Staying online, staying inside for 2 years straight has been a struggle. Also with the tornado, all the trees coming down, it's definitely lowered our morale as a community. So that's our goal. We want people to come to this space and be inspired to spread what they learn, and take what they learn while they're there and spread it to the community. So you leave being inspired to do more good. And then our last goal is to reconnect the community, because we could all use that right now. So the way we're doing this, we're actually having a community event around Earth Day. And so basically what's going to go on there is we're going to give some information. It's going to be fun. There's going to be food and everyone is welcome to join. That's our biggest goal. And we're also here today to get involved with the community. We're looking for experts. We're looking for people to come help us, and we want to help spend our time helping you guys as well and build a connection with the whole community. And that's pretty much all about our project. And please come visit our table. We would love to tell you more information. Thank you.
We want to thank all of our speakers today. I also want to thank the folks that are going to be manning the tables out there. I want to thank all of you for attending this event. As I said, we're hoping this is our first annual, but it's for me a great turnout. I was just hoping it was more than just relatives of mine showing up. So I want to thank you very much for that. I do want to let you know, we do have a couple more speakers, we'll get more in depth as far as what's going on here in Upper Dublin. But also while you're visiting the tables out there, we've had a very generous donor who has donated some pretzels out there, as well as some donut munchkins, as I understand. But at this point, I do want to appreciate the partnership that we have with the Park and Recreation Department for pulling this whole thing together. And again, thank Becca for her AV wizardry back there. I'd like to introduce Director Rica now, who'll be talking a little bit about the Twining Park project. So thank you.
I'm going to try to do this with people behind me. I feel like everyone's just watching.
I'm moving around.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. You're fine. I was just.
I got
apologize, you have to look at the back.
I do, while Becca's getting it set up, I do want to just point out, I've really had the pleasure, my department's had the pleasure to work with most of the groups that all introduce themselves. I've actually been involved with the PBL program, the project-based learning program with the high school, their last 2 or 3 projects. Fantastic program, and we're really fortunate we have something like that here in Upper Dublin Township. Not every community has something like that. I've given variations of this presentation about Twining Valley Park throughout the last couple of years. But I do specifically want to talk about some of the environmental improvements, but I also just want to give a general update on what's going on at the park as well. Who has no idea what Twining Valley Park is? It's okay, I won't be offended. Okay, that's good. We've done something right. Okay, next slide. So Twining Valley Park was in many ways a different golf course, but has always been an open space property in Upper Dublin Township. 105 acres. So the upper half, 87 acres, that's more on the turnpike side, and then it's 18 acres here. Also actually included on those grounds are Burnbrae Fire Station, and then the Fort Washington training grounds, Fort Washington Fire Company training grounds as well. It's bisected by Twining Road, but there is a tunnel underneath of it. So if you haven't been to the property, I encourage you to just go check it out and walk around. Next slide, please. So quick background, basically the township acquired the property in the early 1960s. At that point, it was Burnbrae Golf Course. It's changed name several times. It was Twining Valley Golf Course, it was Upper Dublin Golf Course, but it was it's operated as a golf course since 1931. When the township started buying portions of it, that's when we actually started running some of the operations. In 1982, we stopped running operations, but we hired Links Management. They basically served as the primary manager of the property for approximately 39 years. And then we did the township funded by PADCNR ended up doing a feasibility study about if it's not a golf course, what else could it be? We started that process in 2014, received a grant, and then finished that project up in 2016. Steve Stone, who was actually here, he was one of the members of our feasibility study committee. Looking to see if there's anybody else I missed that was also on that committee. I don't think so, but we had really good involvement from the general public. As part of that, we also did a survey, a public survey, randomly mailed. We had a 39% return rate on a written survey. That's unheard of, which really showed us that the community wants to see some type of involvement, with us at this. And the commissioners then made the decision in 2019 to discontinue use of it as a golf course. And as of December 1 in 2019, it became a park or preserve. Then we actually, prior to that, we started submitting for grants. We received our first set of grants in 2019. We received over $1 million in grants so far from DCED, DCNR, and Montgomery County Planning Commission. That's through the Monco 2040 grant. And we've actually have started, if you've been to the park, we started phase 1A development in 2020. We wrapped up phase 1A, which was mostly the dog park and half-mile trail on the 18-acre side. In the meantime, we've received some additional grants, and we should be finishing up phase 1 this year. Next slide, please. In general, some of the things that exist right now, public access, and really in general, what the permitted activities are. The general public has access to the entire property. That we see people using it for a variety of different ways. Bird watching immediately became a big hit. We actually found birds that they hadn't found in Montgomery County several months after it stopped operating as a golf course that hadn't really seen anywhere else. So it immediately became this really great habitat. We do mow pathways right now, so we have 25-foot mowed areas. The rest of the property, we kind of really have stopped mowing. If it's not active recreation space, and I'll talk a little bit about our endeavors and our activities with that, but basically we're not going to mow just to mow, but we wanted to mow to provide access. We also went a little bit wider than you normally would, because basically the opening of this park coincided with COVID. We had nothing to do with COVID, I promise you that, but I will say it was a great resource. We saw a huge amount of use in 2020 and 2021. We even saw some golfers who were trying to resurrect its old use, especially when all the golf courses were closed down. We also have started really invasive plant management. Colleen Kenny, our natural resource manager, is going to talk about invasive non-native plants. But actually us taking over this park really coincided with the commissioners creating that position. We never had a natural resource manager, nor do most municipalities. I think that also shows where our community's needs are and thoughts are, as well as our board of commissioners, having the foresight to think about, we need to be doing more and more in our natural areas, including Twining Valley Park. This property represents about 18% of all the open space that the township owns. So it's a significant amount, especially on that side. I'll say that side of Upper Dublin, that side of the turnpike. And I'm going to try to make this quick. This is usually an hour presentation. So, this is our first park where we allow leash pets over the entire property. We originally just did 18 acres, and now we've expanded it. The biggest thing is leashed. So if you're at the park, we do ask that you just keep your pet leashed, because at the same time, we're simultaneously trying to create a preserve. And we want to make sure that birds, either resident or migratory birds, small mammals, don't feel that they're being really targeted. And dogs are predators. They are canines. They're just like foxes, and in that regard. So if a meadow-based bird doesn't feel comfortable, it's not going to nest there. It's not going to make that their home. So that's why keeping your dog leashed at our properties. Natural Lands has a lot of great properties. Wissahickon has a lot of great properties. We ask that you do keep your dogs leashed there. You're going to hear me hammer that out a lot. The former clubhouse on the property, a lot of people have asked us, what is that? Well, right now it's serving really our parks division, because we don't have a township building. And it's serving our recreation division as well. So we have a lot of programs, camps, and all of our park division operations are operating out of there right now. There is some investments that need to be made into the building, but it's a pretty solid building. I will say it has the original carpet, which is terrorizing to me in a way, but we have cleaned it up. And our goal is for that to be community use in some way. There's even discussion about, could a portion of that building become a restaurant or a brewery or something like that? That would be a long-term vision for us, or maybe an event venue. But recognizing we have other financial priorities in our community, that's not the first thing we're moving forward with. And then there's a maintenance garage on the property as well. The township was paying about $20,000 a year for renting maintenance space. So when we took over this property, we were able to start using that space immediately. Next slide. That was really one part of that. Phase 1 development, real quick. So we're going to be putting in basically by the end of this year, we should have 2.5 miles of 8 to 10 foot wide macadam trail throughout the entire property. That'll actually be like an exterior circle of the 87-acre side. And again, most of the 18-acre side, that's in already. That will be for bike, pedestrian, rollerblades. If you've seen some of those hills, good luck if you're on a skateboard. That's on you. But we will have at least 1 mile that is fully 100% ADA accessible, and the other will be very, very close to being ADA accessible. We're going to be doing some work with grading there. Within that macadam trail, we're also going to have 2.5 miles of bike optimized single track. Single track is 24 to 48 inch wide, basically dirt trail. That's going to be for hikers and for mountain bikes. There's not a whole lot like that around here. You go to the Wissahickon, and then you're up by like Nakamixon. So that's going to be a really great amenity for an activity that many of us did. You know, Steve talked about climbing trees. Well, most of us probably rode a bike when we were younger, and that is a lifelong activity. I road cycle a little bit, I gravel cycle a little bit, and it's something that having something like that, maybe kids never got an opportunity to see that or didn't get experience of that. And this is a safe place where they can go, where it's being maintained. We're also, through our recreation division, going to be running mountain bike camps, programs. We're getting bikes donated so people can come just try it out. And then the dog park is already in, so that's almost 5 acres in size. We have 3 separate enclosures. That's on the 18-acre side. The one thing this spring, we'll be building an adjacent parking lot. That'll be a 60-car parking lot. That will be a membership base for residents that will be free. For non-residents, we'll be charging about $50 a year, and that money is going to go right back to keeping really the park maintained. We're actually working with a private vendor who's talking about putting a dog wash in as well. So that would be a private public partnership. So we'll see how that goes. Next slide, please. Also, we're trying to improve community connections. So as part of phase 1, we're going to be putting a better connection in at Susquehanna and Twining, right where Burn Bay Fire Station is. So it'll actually bring you into the park. And then Drescher Brook Townhomes, which is just more towards the turnpike. So that is just north of us. We're going to be putting a pedestrian connection in there as well. The other 2 outlined that are not part of this project because of their scale. Air Lane, for those that are familiar with that section of the township, we can't go over it. If you've ever read the book, we're going on a bear hunt. Can't really go over it, can't go under it. So we're trying to figure out how to go through it in the correct way. So we are currently looking at doing a tunnel to get under. I will say it's not cheap. And again, we have a lot of other financial priorities. So we're going to be looking for grant funding to assist us with this. The Build Back Better program is a prime candidate for that. The other thing that we're actually working on, and we're close to finalizing the agreement, is getting a connection at School Lane. So this would be from Thomas Fitzwater Elementary School, where Sunny Willow Swim Club is. We'll have a direct connection into the Willow Manor neighborhood. There's about 900 homes that are fully connected to sidewalk. That all those people would be able to then access the park safely through that way. Next slide. Very small. This is on our website, but this is actually showing the 3 phases. So everything in red should be done by the end of this year. Phase 2 is things in yellow. That's going to include expanded parking. We currently have 90 paved spots on the property. We're looking to expand that to 300 spaces. This is the idea of that is if you look at Mondock Common, that has a total of 300 spaces. That's separated by 4 different parking lots to put it in scale. The plan is to have events at this site, but also just general use. We expect and anticipate the trail system to attract a lot of people. This is a safe place to be able to ride your bike. There's not a lot of places like that in the township either. Also, as part of phase 2, we're looking to put in pickleball courts for those that play pickleball on this side of it. And then a graduated bike park, which would be a really unique piece. I had photos of the graduated bike park on here, but I knew I only had so many slides to work with. But if you go to our website, there's a lot of great photos on there. Basically what it is, it's providing a safe, very different biking experience from pre-K all the way to adult. So it's basically two phases. The first one is it's a bike playground. It's basically mountain biking for pre-K through 5th to 6th graders. It has 6 different environment that they'll ride through. So wetlands, the desert, mountains, forests, and it gives the experience like they're doing that in there. Very cool. Check out the photos on our website. The other part is an asphalt pump track. So think BMX without the jumps. You kind of flow through the site. That'll be for rollerblades, skateboards, scooters, but primarily built for bikes. It's bike optimized as well. We did macadam instead of, you'll see a lot of dirt tracks like this as well, because it's maintenance free or very little maintenance. We're also able to control the stormwater a little bit more and get infiltration. We're not getting a whole lot more staff with this, so we are trying to come up with creative ways of how we can really develop the program. The third phase is it's a pavilion, restrooms, and then also a naturalized playground here. Actually, through the PDL program, we built a naturalized playground, which is using natural elements at Robbins Park. This is going to be a little bit beefier version of that. So it'll be a combination of manufactured and natural pieces. Think hills, but tunnels going through those hills, a streamway that kids can play in. And that's a way to basically, I know we're doing this on a 105-acre naturalized site, but the idea is we live in the suburbs. I grew up on a farm, so a little bit more rural. You kind of need to incrementally get people used to the outdoors. And this is a way to introduce people to the property, get them there, and then encourage them to explore the rest of the property. Next slide, please. So just to give you a quick idea of some of the naturalization that's going on, it doesn't give a great idea, but this is the property in June of 2019 when it was still operating as a golf course. And this is June of 21, now that it's being naturalized a little bit more. You'll start seeing, just like if you don't get a haircut for a while, you'll start seeing it get a little bit thicker here versus some of these areas. That's where you can see just by limiting mowing on the property. We're not putting fertilizers, herbicides down anymore. So you'll start to see this grow more and more out. We're taking photos about once a year, same spots, to just kind of show the growth and the development. If you like sweet gum trees, we have a lot of them all of a sudden. Once you stop mowing oak and sweet gum and some other trees, there's seedlings all over the property, which is really encouraging to see. And as some of the students were talking about with the PBL program about restoring, we're trying to really restore nature, but still provide some recreation. Next slide, please. And then this is just a little more current, but you can start seeing the trail system that's going in. The dog parks are defined there. And we're going to start working on some parts of the other property. Next slide, please. Last slide, I promise. So 3 other opportunities really that we look at what the property is going to provide for the community. We're creating the new normal. And we actually started this 5 years ago when we started reducing our mowing. We actually gained almost 50% of a full-time employee just by reducing our mowing. So you'll see some people will call us and contact us and say, our parks look a little bit shabbier than normal. What we basically identified was passive use or non-active recreation use, and we stopped mowing those areas. And then we basically said, okay, where else can we mow a little less frequently? Or where can we stop mowing completely? So we actually reduced our overall operating hours by 20%, just mowing. It is our #1 thing that we do. 40% of our time is spent mowing. We got it down to about 25% right now, and that give or take depending on the season and the weather. But also people need to understand that taking care of our trees, reducing mowing, these are things that you can also do on your properties. Planting native plants. Cindy Nuss is here. She's from Birdtown, but Cindy actually got us a grant for a native plant garden. And that's something that we're doing. It's a demo garden to see, hey, these are great plants that you can have at your house as well. And this is something you can do. So that's really what we're trying to do. Plenty of opportunities for volunteering and learning more about nature. Colleen will touch on that a little bit more. But if you like to get dirty, you want to remove invasives, you want to plant trees, you want to help trees grow, volunteer with us, and that'll be a perfect opportunity to do that. We have 105 acres to do that. We have 600 total acres in the township. And the biggest thing is we want Twining to be a place for conservation, recreation, and restoration. And for all those things to be able to coexist. And that's really where we're trying to create the new normal for what community parks can be. Not every park needs to be mowed. Not every park needs to look perfect aesthetically. Not every park needs to look like a golf course. There are times and places for that. Athletic fields, based on the amount of wear and tear, you do need to do herbicide, fertilizers in order to maintain that facility. But it doesn't mean everywhere else around it that you need to be doing that. And that's what we're really trying to do. We encourage everyone to come out, even if you have to carry a child on your back. Megan is a resident who comes out to a lot of our events. She has 3 kids, and every kid, even if they can't walk yet, they're out there helping out. So next slide, please. So if you do have questions or you want to get involved more, you can always give me a call. Send me an email. This is actually from our Cross Classic event. It's a cycling event that we started 2 weeks after we took over the property. This is our 3rd year that we just had it. We just love this photo, but I think it gives you an idea of how recreation and nature can kind of interact. And again, this is something very unique that we wouldn't be able to do, hold an event like this without a property like Twining Valley. That's all I have. Thank you. Sorry, Colleen, I took up a little bit more time than I was supposed to, but I'll be outside, Colleen, and I'll be outside if you have other questions. But Rebecca manages our website, and there's a ton of information on our website specifically about Twining Valley and some of the other endeavors that we're going after. So thank you. That's all I got.
While Colleen is coming up, I just wanted to take 10 seconds and mention something that I forgot. Many people have contacted me and they are members of the Shade Tree Commission asking what can you do to help us replant and recover from the horrendous losses of the tornado? Obviously, one thing you can do is plant a tree. Another thing is the Upper Dublin Board of Commissioners at its December meeting established the tree planting and care fund. If you go onto the township website, you'll see a reference to that. You can make donations to that fund, and it will go exclusively for the planting and care of trees in Upper Dublin Township. Sorry, Colleen.
No problem. All right, good morning. My name is Colleen Kenny. I'm the Natural Resource Manager with the Parks and Rec Department for Upper Dublin Township. I'm still relatively new. I've been with the township for about a year and a half. And what a year and a half it's been. So it's nice to get to meet you guys. I'll be out in the lobby, so looking forward to meeting some of you. So I'm going to talk today about tornado recovery, invasive species, as well as UD Cares, which is our volunteer program. So we got a lot of ground to cover. Go ahead, Rebecca. So just starting with tornado recovery, I'm going to go through some of the parks and some of the steps that we're taking for recovery in these different parks. So the first one is Rose Valley Preserve. Some of you may not even know where that is. It's between Butler Pike and Bell Lane, sort of. And it's a pretty natural park. It's a lot of trails, no pavement or playgrounds or anything like that. But it was in pretty much the direct path of the tornado. You can kind of see we have a little bridge right there. That's the bridge after cleanup. So this is another area. We lost a lot of trees. Go ahead, Rebecca. So one of the first things we did, the whole park sort of slopes towards a creek. And with all the tree canopy lost, we were concerned about erosion and sedimentation into the creek. So we got out there right after cleanup and we had a contractor seed with annual ryegrass. That's designed to be able to help stabilize the soil while we're waiting to get into plant trees. Go ahead, Rebecca. And then in terms of planting, this is one of the first spots on our list because we sustained so much tree loss. So we have an Eagle Scout that's going to be planting 100 trees there in April. And then we're also running a UD Cares planting where we're putting in about 200 trees also in April. I'm looking at either the 2nd or the 9th of April. So stay tuned for information on that. We will be looking for volunteers to come out and help with that planting. Go ahead. Tannery Run, this is sort of the, most gut reaction that I think a lot of people have had with the tornadoes looking at Tannery Run. So this is the property that's behind Joel Drive across from the Spark Athletic Fields, sort of next to Temple Ambler. And we're all probably pretty familiar with how bad that looked afterwards. Go ahead, Rebecca. So we had the county contractors that were doing debris cleanup come in and take out the snapped and dangerous trees. We did save as many trees as we could. Unfortunately, there were not really many that were salvageable. And then there's a creek that runs through the bottom of the park, and there's pretty steep slope down to that creek. So again, there's concerns with erosion and sedimentation with disturbing all that soil. So we used what we had on site. We used some of the big logs to make these kind of water bars to help slow water as it's coming down that slope. So far, they seem to be working pretty well. There's not any huge gullies or anything like that. And we've had some pretty good rain. So that's promising. We also then went through and seeded again, like we did at Rose Valley. Unfortunately, it was a little bit late in the year. So a lot of that grass isn't coming up, but we're hoping in the spring it'll start to grow back in. And then we also put down jute matting on that steep slope. The matting will biodegrade, so we can plant trees right through it, and then within about a year, it'll pretty much be gone from site. So I did go and flag as the contractors were removing debris, a lot of retention trees. And if you're driving by the site, you may look out and see these weird, like broken popsicle stick looking trees and be like, what are they doing in there? So it's a lot of trees like this beech here in the foreground that sustained a lot of damage. And we're not expecting that they're going to live a really long time, but I'm hoping that they'll at least be able to live for a little while. And my thinking here is that one, they're going to be able to provide some shade They do usually have some live branches out there. There were a lot of invasive species at Tannery Run before the tornado. Invasive species love sunlight. So we're hoping that at least by being able to keep some shade, we'll be able to kind of put a damper on those populations. Even if they do die, they're great wildlife habitat. So there's tons of hawks out there that are perching on these. There are cavities in some of them for cavity nesting birds. The woodpeckers are out there. So they're still providing habitat. Also, one thing hopefully that will work to our advantage is that when trees are sort of on their last leg of life, a lot of them put out a huge seed crop. So I'm hoping that even the ones that sustained a lot of damage will put out some seeds and help to start the regeneration process. Also, luckily for us, there were a lot of beech trees that were damaged, other species as well, but beech in particular, when it's damaged, puts out a ton of root sprouts. So those will hopefully also add to our planting efforts and our regeneration efforts. And then lastly, soil stabilization. So those trees, even if they die, the roots are going to take a long time to decompose. And in the meantime, they're going to be holding the soil in place, especially on that hillside and down along the creek. So this is a schematic of our planting plan. So we're working with a company called Land Studies out of Lidditz, Pennsylvania. And they put together a planting plan for us. I'll just kind of touch briefly on some of the highlights. So there's these little green circles that you see around. Those are approximate locations of some ball and burlap trees that we'll be installing, mostly behind people's yards to help provide a more immediate buffer. We want to get something kind of large in there to at least help a little bit with some of the visual impacts. There's these kind of dashed lines along the stream, and then there's a couple little pockets. These are little wetland areas. And so what's going in along the streams, it's actually already been completed. We did live staking, which I'll talk about in just a few slides. And then these other colors are just sort of different zones of planting. So for example, this bluish color, that's that steep slope. So we had a lot of nice old oaks there, like 90-inch diameter oaks. So we're doing more upland species there, whereas down here in the green, it's a riparian area. It's a stream corridor, so we're planting more flood tolerant species. Go ahead, Rebecca. So live staking, I just wanted to talk about that for a minute because it's a really cool process if you've never seen it or heard of it. So this is a live stake. There are certain species that you can cut branches off of and just stick them in the ground, and they have a lot of what's called meristem. It's kind of like stem cells. So they'll be able to start putting out roots from the bottom and branches from the top. You can even flip them upside down and they'll root from the top and branch from the bottom. They're really cool. Super cost effective. They're like $1 a stake. And this is something you can even do in your own yard. You can take cuttings from like willow trees or dogwoods. Those are the two most common species, and stick them in the ground and they'll start growing. So you can see we put these along the stream bank. They're great for stream bank restoration because they immediately start rooting and they'll help to hold those eroding banks together. Go ahead, Rebecca. I don't know if these videos will work, but cool. So this is a video of the live staking process.
I'm just going to share the screen, sorry.
Okay. So this is Land Studies out on site doing the installation. So they have this like 2-foot auger and they're just drilling directly into the stream bank. And the ground is frozen and they're still going really quickly. And so you can see this is a really fast installation. So they were able to install 500 live stakes in about an hour. That's where the ground started to be frozen. And then, so what you do, so you drill in, you stick the stake in, and then this is the next step. They just kind of have to go back to each one and sort of tighten up the soil around it. They push it in. If it's about a 2 or 3 foot long stake, they'll put about half of that underground. So they have to kind of shove it into the ground. All right, next slide. Okay, so this is not Tannery Run, but I wanted to just give you guys a sense of the style of planting that's going to be going in there. So this is a picture from a CREP planting. CREP is a planting program through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It's the industry standard for planting, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic. It was sort of born out of Chesapeake Bay restoration efforts. But this is sort of the gold standard for planting programs, especially on large acreage areas. So we're going to be using seedlings. They're little, maybe about foot tall seedlings that go in these plastic tubes. And truly they start out small, but they transplant really well and they grow super fast. So usually within about 5 years, you wouldn't know the difference between a bare root seedling and a ball and burlap tree. And they're about $1 a pop versus several $100s. So that's why we're using things like that for Tannery Run, where we're planting about 1,200 trees. So ahead, Rebecca. Our biggest challenge is going to be the ongoing maintenance. So all these trees are going to need to get mowed to keep the invasive brush down. So we're going to be mowing about 2 times a year. The ball and burlap trees will need to be watered regularly. Vines and invasive shrubs are going to be growing up through those tree tubes. So we're going to be, need to maintain around those trees. Those tubes are also held up with a wooden stake. Those occasionally get like knocked down by animals or by mowers, whatever it might be. So you need to do regular maintenance on the tree tubes as well. So I mentioned that just to stay tuned for volunteer opportunities. We're thinking about doing sort of an adopt a row of trees kind of program where you could volunteer to maintain a certain row of trees or a certain section of trees. We're still sort of in the brainstorming phase about that, but just something to keep on your radar. All right, the Lockoush Reservoir. This was also hit really hard by the tornado. We have 2 Eagle Scout projects planned for this spring. There's also a Girl Scout doing her Gold Star project, doing trash cleanup there. There's a lot of insulation and vinyl siding still at that site. And just other areas that we have on our radar that we know we're going to need to replant. Probably a lot of these are going to be in the fall. So this coming fall, so Spark Athletic Fields, Williams and Franklin Parks, Whitcomb Cemetery lost almost every single tree in it. Klosterman Park, we have planted some, and we're going to need to do a little bit more there, as well as the township building whenever it gets back up and running. So, go ahead. All right, so that's it for tornado recovery. I'm just going to move on quickly to talk about invasive species. In this case, I'm talking mostly about invasive plants. So an invasive species is anything that's non-native and can cause environmental or economic harm or harm to human health. So basically what they do is outcompete the natives, and they're detrimental for a few reasons. The first is that they degrade food and habitat for wildlife. They particularly negatively impact songbirds. The rule of thumb is that you need about less than 30% cover of invasives to have sustainable songbird populations. That's because birds tend to be insectivorous, they eat insects, and insects tend to be really host specific to a certain plant. So if you don't have a plant that insect needs, it won't survive there. And then the birds that eat them also don't have food. They can negatively impact safety and access. So for example, trees that have a lot of vines growing up in the canopy, they're particularly susceptible to ice storms and wind throw and things like that, and it can be a safety hazard. They're associated with higher rates of Lyme disease. So not only higher tick populations, but the questing time between the ticks and the white-footed mouse is lower. So there's actually higher rates of Lyme disease in the tick population. And that's particularly with Japanese barberry, which is a common landscaping plant. So if you have barberry, that's a good one to get rid of. And then lastly, fire and structural damage. So bamboo in particular is highly flammable. So it's actually a fire hazard. Go ahead, Rebecca. So I'll just talk a little bit about restoration efforts. In terms of removing invasive plants, our first goal is usually working on vines. So if you come out to a UD Cares event, a lot of times we're cutting vines. And the reason for that is they make a lot of impact in the short term. So an invasive shrub, will outcompete the other natives. And, once those overstory trees die, then it will start to, have an impact on the population. But vines are bringing down trees in the near term. And once you lose that shade, once you lose that tree canopy, like I mentioned earlier, invasive plants really like sunlight. So then it just makes an even more favorable environment for them to grow. So we usually try to leverage other efforts around the township. So for example, if we have an invasive removal project and then we get an Eagle Scout who's looking to plant trees, we'll kind of use that Eagle Scout to double up and be part of that restoration effort. And then my last point is just that the goal is not necessarily to eradicate invasives. And I think that's helpful to keep in mind if you're thinking of removing invasives on your own property. You don't necessarily have to remove all of them. It's okay if some are still lingering. It's a really daunting task to think about eradication. But the goal is really to just keep the invasive populations low enough that the natives have a chance and are still there and an important part of the ecosystem. So anytime that we're removing invasives, we are trying to replant or protect the natives that are there. Oftentimes because of deer pressure and things like that, there aren't any natives in the understory. So a lot of times we have to come in and plant. And then always maintenance. Anytime you're removing invasives, you can't expect it to stay that way. So we have to go back and do ongoing maintenance. But that should decrease over time. It should get easier to maintain over time. And this is just an example from a UD Cares event that we had at Burnbrae Park. We're just freeing up some of these trees from vines that just hadn't had a lot of TLC for a while. And you can see, so we were doing it on the other side of the trail as well, but just 2 hours of work cutting vines can make a really big difference for these trees. Which brings me to UD Cares. So it's our township environmental volunteer program. We do things like invasive species removal, tree planting, trash cleanup. I guess we love this picture. It's a great picture.
I'm embarrassed. Colleen had her presentation done way before me, so she gets better.
It's great. Because truly we do have projects for all different ages. We even had a group of 3 and 4 year olds come out and do invasive removal. So if you have a group of students or kids of any age, any ability, we can find a project that's suitable for them. Go ahead, Rebecca. Just so you kind of know how to join the UD Cares group, we have an email list and we'll notify you when we have a volunteer event. We're not going to spam your inbox. We have about 1 event a month, although I'm hoping to ramp that up. And then we usually have more in the spring and fall. But if you go to upperdublin.net, you have to scroll all the way down to this e-newsletter sign up. Go ahead, Rebecca. And when you click on that, it'll take you to another page and you can sign up for the Upper Dublin Cares group. So I highly encourage you to all join, even if you just ignore all our emails, at least you'll be in tune with what we're working on. So go ahead, Rebecca. All right, so that's all I've got. If you have any questions, if you can't figure out how to join UD Cares, you can also shoot me an email directly, ckenny@upperdublin.net. That's all I got.
Okay. That concludes the auditorium presentation part of the program today. The table displays are waiting for you. I was remiss in not thanking the library for hosting us. And they also put together a display of their holdings that overlaps with the topics of this presentation. So thank you all for being here.
I'll
Enjoy the
remind
table
everybody there
display.
are pretzels out there. Please feel free to walk around the tables. I think this is next station.